I'm going to be talking to you about the process of pressing apple cider. I've been working in the industry for 6 years now. And how many of you have heard of apple juice, right? You've all heard of apple juice? Yeah. Well, this is a little bit different, and I'll explain. Massachusetts, their Department of Agriculture, kind of gives a good definition on that. I'll explain that in a bit. But right there, that picture, that's a barrel, that's a 55-gallon drum packed full of cider. So that's kind of what it looks like. Those bubbles on top, that's just air kind of building up, and it's full of pulp. So like if you drink orange juice, I didn't just mean full of pulp. So to explain it, so one to tell the difference, and this is from the TV show The Simpsons, and it's kind of funny, but it makes a lot of sense. So if it's clear and yellow, you got juice there, fella. If it's tangy and brown, you're in cider town. And so when you go to the store and you buy like apple juice, it's clear and yellow, right? Cider is totally different because there's tons of pulp in it. It doesn't go through a filtration process and pasteurizing process. Cider can be pasteurized, the pulp and still look the same, but we're going to focus on raw cider today. And that's how the Department of Agriculture, the Massachusetts one, defines it. And that's really what you need to know. So it's different. It's not the same. So, all right, so we're going to break it down. So from tree to cider. So you got to kind of understand how we get there. So the first thing that we do is we pick the apples. So there's these rows, and I'll just show you here. So this is a row right here, and it's empty. You don't see any apples on it. That's because we picked all the apples. So imagine that just packed full of apples, and we go through with that. So when we get them all off the tree, we put them in these big, you can see them right here, these big bins. Each of these bins holds about 2,000 pounds worth of apples, depending on the type of apple. Some apples are less dense, so it's like maybe half that. It's kind of weird. But then once we get them off the tree, we got to store these apples. So this room here with like all the pink insulation all around it, this is a cooler. And and just so you know, I'm using the place where I work, which is Timberland Hills Orchard, as an example. But this is pretty standard throughout the industry. There's not much that changes through it. The only difference is when you get larger, they have bigger coolers and more advanced. They use a chemical called Smart Fresh to keep the apples lasting longer. We don't do that. We're seasonal. But this is pretty much standard. So we store the apples in this giant cooler. It stays at refrigerant temperatures, so around 35 degrees, and this prevents them from rotting. And then we have to sort through the apples. So at our department, we take all the bad apples, which you would call not store quality, it's not your perfect apple, right? Imagine like a Red Delicious, they look good, yeah, at a store, but that's not how they look when we juice them. They're scabbed up, they're beat up, they don't look very good, but the juice is still good, so that's what we use. So we sort for the bad ones because they're good for juice. So, and then here's a picture of us loading it. So we have this truck, there's 4 bins there, and that's what we load them into, and we bring them in. So then we get a big pallet jack, and we lift them off, and we bring it into the cooler. So that's how we get it from the tree into the crate, into the cooler, and we store them. Then we gotta focus on pressing apples. So this is a picture of me and a buddy. This is Jordan. I work with him. That's me. And then there's us up there. And then this is our press. So there's different types of presses, but I'm just gonna focus on this one. There's a lot. This is about a $20,000 press. You can get a press for people that want to make it at home for like a 20th of that. You can get it for about $1,000. They're pretty cheap, the other ones, and I've worked on those too. They're a lot of fun. They're made out of wood, but I'm just going to focus on this one. So the first thing we got to do is we got to wash the apples. So when the apples come in, they can be contaminated. So what we do is we have diluted bleach water, and what that does is it just cleans it all off. And then once they're cleaned off with that bleach water, we have to run them through just regular water to get all the bleach off. So, so that you see there's a sink here, right here. So this is the clean water, and then in this container here, which is kind of cut off, that's where the bleach water sits. So we take them, we dump them in, and then when they're dumped in, we move them over and rinse them off. And then from there we have to grind the apples. So there's this chute here, and the chute, we throw the apples down there. There's a blade that sits in there, and it's got edges on it, like really sharp edges. And what it does is it chops it up. And I'll show you what the pulp looks like later. So it chops it up into this really fine pulp. And it'll drop down into right here where my hand is. There's this bag here. So it drops on this bag in between 2 hydraulic presses. So it'll squeeze it when we hit a button, and you tell it which way to go. So that's how we do that. So again, it goes down the chute, grinds up right here, drops down, into this bag, and then we're gonna press it. So there's my control panel, and then here's the press, and it'll squeeze it. And then there's a catching container down here. So the catching container catches all the juice. And then from there, usually we have a bucket sitting down here. So a 5-gallon bucket, and I'll collect into that, and then we move it to a 55-gallon drum to be put into the bottles later. So now we gotta focus on, so right here, this is a big barrel. This is what we use now. We don't use metal ones anymore. We use plastic ones. And there's a little nozzle down right here. And what that nozzle allows us to do is allows us to put in these bottles. So here's a gallon and a half gallon, just for reference of what we're putting them in. So we have, once that's full, 55 gallons worth of cider, which, to give you a reference, so to make 1 gallon takes about half a bushel, which is 20 pounds of apples. So multiply that out, and you got quite a lot of apples to make that. So once we drain it and fill each bottle, we have to wash the bottles, because while we're doing it, the cider gets on it, so it gets sticky, right? Imagine like getting a soda on the counter and you go to wipe it, it's kind of sticky. That's kind of what it's like. So we just rinse them off with some hot water. And then we have to put labels on it because it's not pasteurized. So like I was explaining earlier, apple juice is pasteurized, this cider is not. So we have to put a label on it, put a warning label that says that you can get sick or die or whatever. But the chances are pretty slim because we go through so many precautionaries to make sure that it doesn't happen, that you really don't have to worry about it. And it tastes pretty good. So then once it's all packaged and labeled, we have to deal with the leftovers. So right here, this is what the mash, this is what the pulp looks like. And you can do quite a few things with it. What we do is, there's a farm next to us, and people come in all the time asking for it. People feed it to deer, to their cows, to their horses. You can actually use it yourself if you want. I've ate it. It's kind of nasty because it's dry. So it's like, imagine an apple with no juice. You just bite it, it's dry. It's really gross. It's not something I would want to eat, but there are people that do use it to make like applesauce. They'll mix it with all sorts of spices. It's kind of weird. You don't have the juice, but they make applesauce. I've seen it. It's interesting. So yeah, there's all sorts of things that you can do with it. And nothing goes to waste in the process. So yeah, that's kind of how you make apple cider. It's a kind of a complicated process that I tried to pack into something a little bit more simple. But yeah, so if you ever are pressing cider, it's definitely kind of a fun process to learn, and it's enjoyable. So yeah, I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen and learn about how to press cider.